Welcome back, everyone. I am so happy that you're back here to the Nourish by Claudia channel. And today I'm really stoked because I have my partner in crime, my best friend, and wonderful mindset coach and personal trainer, Jed Cameron, which is also the host of the podcast It's a Mind Game. And today we're gonna discuss exercise from the lens of our personal experience and what we did when we were going through hypothalamic amenorrhea, how we exercised before hypothalamic amenorrhea, and how we are exercising today. So it's going to be a very juicy video, and just make sure that you stick till the end. But now, without further ado, welcome, Jade. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back here. We haven't recorded a podcast since I've come off mat leave, but it's my first time back on your channel. So I'm overjoyed to see your beautiful smiley face first thing in the morning and talking about some of my favorite things, which is HA and exercise.
Absolutely. And how is the postpartum period treating you at the moment?
I've been blessed. Happy, healthy babies. And while it does come with its challenges, for the most part, it's been pretty smooth sailing. I don't know, I feel like my babies just make me even more passionate about this space because I just want every woman who wants to be a mum to enjoy the experience. And if you don't want to be a mum, that's completely fine. But if you do, oh goodness, you should do everything you can to make that wish come true because you just can't imagine how incredible it is until you're there.
And I think that it makes it so much easier to do this work when you're a mom because you really understand the importance of motherhood and how precious this time with your kids is. And you just want every single woman that is interested in motherhood, obviously, to be able to experience it. Um, would you say that that's how you have been feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. And even just the appreciation you get for your own body, watching this tiny body grow. And I don't know if you ever had this with your kids, Claudia, and I'll super quickly say it because I know we're going to talk about exercise. It happened with Casima as well. But I'd look into her eyes and be like, oh my God, like these tiny little balls of gel allow her to see. And look at the color that's on them and look how they wiggle around. Or something like really silly, like them filling up a nappy. Like, oh my goodness, I created a gastrointestinal system and they can go to the toilet. Like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And it makes the magic of our bodies stand out. And you go, oh gosh, I've never thought about myself going to the bathroom as something magical, but it is. So it's kind of quite beautiful to have that in front of you and bring that awareness back to yourself and how magical our bodies actually are to do all the processes that they're doing each and every day that we kind of just take for granted because we've been doing it for so long.
I absolutely agree, and nature is perfect in its own way. But I do remember that when Christian came out from my womb, and I would see this little tiny ball of joy, and I kept looking at him and thinking, "You are inside of me." Like a couple of hours ago, you are inside of me, and you are a fully formed baby that it's
It's
able to see, it's
crazy.
able to cry, it's able to talk, it's able to breastfeed. How is that even possible? So
Yeah.
yeah, fertility, pregnancy, motherhood, all magical things. So
Yes.
let's really chat about what happened in our past and how we managed to move through some of the obstacles that we have encountered so that we can inspire more women to really give their 100% in this recovery journey. Um, Jade, why don't we start with your experience? Because I know that you were into bodybuilding, you still love your exercise. So tell us more about how you lost your period.
Sure. So backtracking super early days, I was a national stream gymnast and training 20 to 24 hours a week. And I loved it. I love training. I love moving my body. I love having goals and achieving them. I love competing. It was just everything to me. And when I was 16, I was forced to retire because I had stress fractures in my back.
Mm.
Another interesting thing that I now know was a form of HA was that I didn't have my period until 6 months after I stopped gymnastics. And at the time, I was 16, approaching 17. So it's quite late. But I was training a whole lot. I was quite lean, um, and not due to any kind of intentional eating strategies or anything like that. I just trained a lot and had a very small appetite. Um, fast forward, I was so lost with myself and I didn't know who I was and all the things we go through in HA, funnily enough. And next minute, I found myself in a gym training with my dad, growing some muscle. And this thread got pulled of health and fitness is the be all end all. I love it. How good can I get at it? Started buying all the oxygen magazines and women's health magazines. And fast forward to the end of year 12, I enrolled myself into a personal training course, loved it, and decided that the best thing I could do for my personal training career was to compete in a bodybuilding show because then I could prove to people that I know what I'm doing. And also, I could look like the women on Oxygen magazine because that's what I wanted. So fast forward again, and I'd done the comp prep, I competed, I placed, and I was just on the biggest high. Like, this is life. And that's when everything started to go a little bit sour because I had tapped out on my knowledge. I knew how to get this incredible result, but I didn't know that it wasn't sustainable. And I didn't know that you need to reverse diet or take time off. I just kept climbing. So 6 weeks later, I competed again. And at that point in time, I was bulimic because I was so undernourished that my brain was screaming at me to eat. And of course, it would give in for that little bit, only to have me completely freak out and quote unquote undo the damage. The training side of things, I always loved and I still do, which if you're watching the video, you'll still see my cheeks like perking up because I just love training. But at the most, that's when I had HA again during comp prep. And I would have been training 2 hours, 1.5, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then on my day off, I would do some kind of walk, run, something. So there was still movement. And then, gosh, because I had HA for 6 years, it kind of transitioned. At one point in time, I started eating more because I was overcoming my eating disorders. But to compensate with that, I'd also add on half an hour a day of training to kind of balance it. And then I led into the CrossFit world and I was doing CrossFit 6 days a week, as well as my bodybuilding workouts 6 days a week. So bodybuilding in the morning, CrossFit midday.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
Jane.
yeah, and then I
Sounds
was
like a
personal
lot.
training, and then I was personal training for like 10-hour days as well. But I'm still smiling because I loved it. Like my training was good, I felt good, I looked good, life was great. Um, CrossFit was really wonderful because it actually encouraged me to eat more because that culture does. They're like, you've got to eat to perform. So I started doing that and then I did perform better. And then, oh, I don't know, a few years later, I woke up one morning and decided I wanted to have babies.
How
And
old were you back then when you were exercising twice a day and you were also training other people during the day?
I was pretty much the whole of my 20s.
Mm.
Yeah, whole of my 20s. So obviously I'm 31 now with my babies, but uh, yeah, my first competition I was 20, bodybuilding competition I was 20 years old, which is quite young.
Yeah,
So I'm like a little bit
yeah,
older.
that's why I was wondering. And when did you feel for the first time, your desire to have a baby?
Oh, I would have been 6 months before I got married, I think. So 2017. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And what happened at that point?
It was really strange, to be honest, because I accepted that I couldn't have children because that's what I'd been told by the doctors. And I just woke up one morning and I just thought, oh gosh, I want a baby. And then I started going to the shopping centers and seeing babies and getting clucky. And it was a very primal experience. That's what all I can put it down to is that something just switched in my brain that went, you need this, you want this. And thankfully, the way the stars aligned, I actually found out what HA was and how I could remedy it.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, I hated how to remedy it. I thought it was just a complete disaster. And how dare anyone imply that my health and fitness regime is what was causing my infertility? I remember being angry. I was quite mad. And I'm not an angry person. Um, do you want me to talk about what it led into, or do you want to perhaps share what your training was like
No, please go
during
ahead. It's
HA?
a very interesting story.
Okay. So for my wedding, I went hard and dieted down again and looked a particular way for my wedding. And in all honesty, I have no regrets around it because it was exactly what I wanted to do. And then in my wedding vows, my husband actually suggested growing a family. And then I went,
Mm.
oh, crap. I better get my shit together. Pardon my French, but that's exactly what I thought in a really positive way, because that was the catalyst for me actually leaning in and making change. So I've gone from 2 sessions a day, dieting for the wedding, looking a particular way, feeling really good about it, knowing that it wasn't helping my HA recovery because, dieting
Hang
and
on a second, I'm gonna stop you there, Jade. Were you experiencing any symptoms such as, I don't know, low libido, low energy, headaches, any of those symptoms that are normally connected with hypothalamic amenorrhea? Or it was more around the desire to eat the food and not allowing yourself to actually have it?
that's where mine was a bit complicated because at that point in time, I had overcome the eating disorder side of things. And no, I lie. I lie. Sorry, Claudia. Um, for the most part, my eating and everything had been fine. I ate when I was hungry, but it still wouldn't have matched the energy requirements for the amount
The
of training I was
expenditure.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but when I dieted down for my wedding, which was a really big learning curve for me, is a few days before I got married, I actually had two, I think, binge and purge episodes. And I hadn't been bulimic in years, years and years and years and years. I hadn't had an episode in a really long time. And then I went, oh, would you look at me go, I'm stressed out because things are going on with the wedding and like the crunch time of paying everybody and getting everything organized. But I also know I'm undernourished because I'm really lean and I'm deliberately ignoring my hunger cues because I'm trying to diet down. And I've had two episodes that I've avoided for such a long time. And I'm actually really glad it happened because the penny finally dropped on why these episodes occur. And it really confirmed everything is
That
when you
must have
overdo it
been
all. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been a very scary moment though, because being in a place where I overcame myself bulimia, I remember that the first time that I had an episode after years of not experiencing one, my brain went into the freeze and fight and flight mode because what the hell is going on? It's still a scary time. And I know that you said that the penny dropped at that time, but it must have been also quite overwhelming because you're about to get married. You thought that your nutrition was under control. You were feeling great in general, and then you still had episodes, not only once, but you had it twice as well in a short period of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah, within a couple of days. Yeah.
Okay.
And to your point of symptoms beforehand, other than that episode sort of signaling to me you've taken it too far, I was the kind that just ended up running on adrenaline and cortisol. So I
Mm.
actually felt really great. I felt on top of the world. I was super productive at work. I love the coffee buzz and dieting buzz. I was training really well. I didn't get all the things women typically get that signal you need to do something about this, which honestly can make it more difficult because it's really easy to
Yeah.
justify why you don't need to make change. You're thriving, you're fine.
Mm.
Um, but I had the knowledge of clearly I'm not fine if I don't have a period. After the wedding, and maybe the whole of November, December, I had a bit more fun with training and dieting, not as aggressively. And then I made the decision to strictly drop training down to 1 day a week, 6 days a week. And that felt huge. Like I was moving mountains with that. Um, it didn't work. I did that for a couple of months and nothing happened. And I was quite frustrated about it. So I think I reduced it down to, I don't know, maybe 5 days and then 4 days. And then I started reducing the capacity. So I wasn't pushing as hard. And that's about 11 months worth of work, right? So it wasn't as though every week I was adapting. It was hard. It was like pushing rocks uphill.
Yeah.
But I got to the 11th month and I was just so fed up with everything. I'm sick of reduced capacity. Training's not fun. I've gained weight. This sucks. I'm just going all in because what's the point
May I
of
interrupt
training?
for a second?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, for all the women listening, it's better for us to clarify that you decided to power through and doing HA recovery on your own, which is why it took you possibly more than 12 months to get your period back instead of only a couple of months. And that's also why you said that you were
Yeah.
pushing, oh, yeah, what did you say? That you're pushing something against the
Yeah, I
wall?
was going to
Yeah.
say a
Oh,
colorful word, but I thought I'll go for
yeah.
rocks instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, the reason I didn't seek help is because I didn't want the advice I knew I was going to get. And I think one thing women don't admit to when they're going through HA recovery is we get this like, how much can I get away with? Like,
Mm.
how little do I need to change so that I can just get my period back and move on? And that's how I was. That being said, my version of all in was walking for an hour and doing 1 hour of yoga every day, which I look back in hindsight and go, well, it's still 2 hours of movement.
Mm.
But it was quite gentle. And I got my period back within 4 weeks. I had my period back on, I think it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day of the following year after my wedding, 2018. It's hard to tell if the type of exercise itself was what caused my period to return, or if it was the fact that I finally met the energy balance. Because I found a diary of mine recently that had the food I was eating during that time, because I was writing it down, and I was still eating not much, not
Mm.
much at all. But yes, that's my long-winded exercise experience.
It's interesting that what you said about not wanting to accept the advices that people were gonna give you anyway,
Mhm.
and also trying to find the minimal changes that you need to make that are super sustainable so that you don't have to overall have a look at your life. And
Mhm.
just this morning, I received a couple of messages on from the Facebook group Recover from HA Support that asked me, so what's the best supplement in terms of getting the period back? Like, yeah, supplements can be helpful, especially if there is a deficiency, if you're feeling low in energy, if you have thyroid problems, but they're not really fairy dust. So you actually need to do the work. You need to push those
Mm.
rocks uphill. And if you're stuck in situations where for 12 months nothing is changing and you feel super frustrated and the end goal is getting the period back, fertility, and also working on the mindset, then I really truly believe that getting some help is more beneficial than no. And I actually was wondering, Jade, in hindsight, if you could go back, would you ask someone to help you out?
Yes, because my mindset around it has changed. Um, but that's again me going in as knowing what I know now, not as the person going through it. Because my sort of mantra for it was I got myself into this mess, I can get myself out. Which, look, it served me. I got through it. I got my period back. Um, but I could have spared myself a lot of time and energy and trauma, like more emotional trauma, right? It's not actually a trauma. Um, if I had have followed the path of someone who had a more of a backing on how to get it done in a more efficient way, because 11 months is a long time to be striving for something that feels
Yeah.
like it just feels never ending. um, but the mindset that I had, sort of contrary to the HA, was that I can do everything myself and
Mm.
it's a sign of weakness to ask for help. That being said, I was very happy to throw money at supplements. I was very happy to throw money at alternative therapies, which still helped my recovery process. But again, it was that I can't have someone tell me what I know I need to hear.
So you are basically still investing in your health, but you are
Yes,
just not going for
in the way that I
the
liked.
advices, exactly, the advices that would have
Yes,
really helped you at
I'm
the end of
doing
the day.
everything
Yeah,
except the
because
thing that I know is hard.
I did exactly the same thing. I found myself in a place where I thought, okay, I'm just gonna give my 100%. I'm gonna get this freaking period back. I cannot stand it any longer. So I went to see a naturopath, and I took more than $1,000 of supplements in the first month. And I went to see an acupuncturist for a few months that kept telling me, "Oh, your periods is gonna come back." No,
Mm.
not happen, not very likely anyway, because I was completely undernourished, overly
So I just
stressed.
want to just
Yeah.
the importance of that situation though, of trusting someone saying, "Oh, but your period's going to come back. It should be here," who doesn't know anything about HA.
Mm.
Because you went through that, I went through that. Heaps of women go through that where someone's suggesting your period's knocking on your door. It's just about to show up. It's not fair to have that information told to you and you go, oh, of course, and it's actually not the truth.
Yeah,
So just
it
sorry, I
broke
thought that
my
was so
heart.
important what you
So
mentioned.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt very deeply frustrated very often because of those sentences. Every single time that I would see an acupuncturist that actually didn't even read my blood test results, didn't know anything about my diet or my training routine. And she would tell me, oh, I think that there is a shift right now. So your period is going to come soon. And then not
Mhm,
seeing it for months. That was the worst
mhm.
of the whole story. Not to mention also seeing alternative therapies that have nothing against them, by the way, because I'm still using now.
Of
I'm still
course, they're
using them
wonderful.
nowadays for different reasons. But also, like seeing different specialists telling me, "Oh, you need to just, cut out gluten or cut out dairy, which is why you're not getting the period back." Where in reality, I needed to introduce them in larger amount. Um, but my story is very different from yours because the first time that I lost my period was just for restriction, and I was very young. I was training, not as much as you, but I was mainly not eating the food, really not eating anything. And then it happened again when I was in my early 20s, and that was caused by stress. So also at that time, I wasn't training at all. I was just walking, doing yoga once a week, and I still managed to lose my period because of overly stressful periods. And it's only when I met my husband that he introduced me to running, and that was a killer for me because I was already living in fight and flight. I had a very busy corporate job. I was working long hours. I wasn't sleeping enough. My nutrition was not optimal whatsoever. And he said, okay, let's try running. And I think that that's what really broke me. And for the people that are listening to this and are not watching this, I'm just saying broke me in quotation
Mhm.
mark because I wasn't broken. Um, I just needed some rest, some nutrient, and also a very deep mindset change because that's ultimately what happened to both of us, right? The mindset change is what really changed the rest of our life.
Yeah,
Wait,
absolutely. No,
what were you?
I couldn't help but jump on because you're working the corporate job, you're super stressed out. But I'm sure you had the smiley face on. I've got this all covered. You know,
Oh, I look
life is good.
fantastic.
But
I
then
look
you're
fantastic.
running and the runner's high. I
Yeah.
can't help but think that would have been so addictive to how emotionally you were feeling like, I need an out without anyone knowing. And then you start running and it's the perfect out because you get the runner's high, the endorphins are going, and then only people observing would just go, oh, Claudia's on a health venture, look at her go. And you're like, yeah, look at me go. But that must
And
have been so enticing. Like, I can go for a run and get this relief.
yes and no. So I was really run by adrenaline at that time, but I also did realize that I was very, very anxious. And anxiety has always been one of my traits. But at that time, I was very anxious, but my recovery was horrible. Like I was always in pain. Running
Mm.
was not the right sport for me. So there was the high coming back from the run, but then I would spend so much money going to the physio, going to the chiro, because there was always something going on with my body, knees, hips, back, and things like that. So my body was screaming to simply stop. And I'm gonna shock you now, because on top of the running and the fasting, I also used to drink 5 long blacks. For the US market is 5 Americanos every single day. So I was consuming more than 500 milligrams of caffeine every day and just waiting for my period to magically reappear. Tell me about your caffeine intake because I remember that you told me once that it was pretty high as well.
Do you really want to know?
Oh, please. Might as well
Uh,
share everything today.
like 12 espressos wouldn't have been a
Oof.
I'm working big days. I'm training. So, my day would start at 4 in the morning. I wouldn't get home till 8:30 at night. And I had a Gloria Jean's cafe across the road from the gym. So I would train, I'd go get a short black. I'd work and take a client, I'd go get a short black or a double, because doubles are good. Um, yeah, I don't
That
know.
was a
I
good.
was I was double digits. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the amount of caffeine that I used to drink back at that time will keep me awake for weeks right now, not to mention all the digestive issues that would cause me at this point in my life. But it was absolutely insane. But anyway, Jade, I think that we lived and we learned. And at this part of the life, we discussed what we did and what caused our period to go MIA. And I think that we need to do a follow-up in the next few days where we can actually share how we are training now, because the reality is that we got the period back and we had our kids. We slowly went back to training very quickly after having kids. And now we have our routine that allow us to thrive, that makes us happy, to keep the periods as well, keep the periods happy. And that's something that I definitely would like to share with this audience. So is there anything that you would like to add before I let you go that you would still like to share about your past experience?
One, I look forward to part two. Two, I love that you included that we have a routine, because I think what terrifies so many women is this idea that you can't have a routine if you want to recover from HA. You've got to let everything go and just go with the flow and live spontaneously, which there's definitely elements of that, and it's a skill to build up. But routine's also really helpful, and having plans and set time blocks is also really helpful for life. But more than any, I think what you touched on, that our lives and what caused our HA is quite different. But when we go into part two on how we got our periods back, there is going to be a lot of overlap. And I always find that most interesting about HA is that the stories and how it comes about is so different and unique. But what brings us back is often pretty consistent.
100%. And I love that you mentioned the routine, because I've just finished reading the book Atomic Habits for the third time.
Love it.
I love my habits. I love my routines. They allow me to feel safe. They allow me to thrive. And I am not the kind of person that can always go with the flow. And we also need to underline that not everyone can go with the flow. Bless the women that can do that. It's not for everyone anyway. So let's just do us.
Yes, love
Or
it.
Jade, it was a pleasure having you here today. Thank you for sharing this space with me. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, jade.cameron with a double E for the Jade, or It's a Mind Game podcast and YouTube channel. They're my favorite spots.
And if you haven't listened to the It's a Mind Game podcast, I really quickly invite you all to do it right away. And I'm gonna put the link in the comment section anyway. Thank you, Jade. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.